Look at the understanding knowledge degree. To make devil, what must you first do? To make devil, you must first begin grafting from the original. So the original thought is, I am the supreme intelligence in this form. There's nothing imperfect about the mind of the supreme intelligence that's in this form. As soon as you start saying other little things or using language that undermines that, now you're grafting from original. That's the first thing you do to make devil. The first thing you do. When you're recognizing that you are that supreme intelligence in the form, and then you have this other thought, well, no, I'm not good enough. That thought, to make devil, what must you first do? You're starting to graft from original. Because now once you have that thought, you're going to start creating other thoughts. Just like I said about the Bill degree in the 1 to 40s, this mist ascends into the atmosphere and becomes heavier than gravitation by combining with other forms of mist in different currents of the air. You're starting to combine other different thoughts to reinforce the bullshit. That's why it's important to make sure that you have the type of networks of people that are going to speak to and reinforce your supreme intelligence. So when you look at in North India, they say namaste. That means the God in me or the deity in me greets the deity in you. That's built in the language. That reinforces that idea. When we speak our language, that is the reason why we utilize these type of terms and these phrases, because it reinforces the supreme intelligence within us. When we say queen, we're not just saying that shit just because it sounds good. It's to reinforce the divinity and the royalty of who you actually are. In the American dialect, because it ain't a language, it's just borrowed from a whole bunch of other languages, you got a lot of different things that undermines the ability for us to be who we actually are. And you have to be mindful of that, because you could be saying stuff all of the time that undermines or that's adversarial to who you essentially are. That is the first step to grafting from original. You got to be conscious of that language. So even when you're looking at it from a biblical perspective, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and the Word became flesh. The exact same thing. Also, when you look into Genesis, Genesis is what genes is. Look at the word, genes is. In the Genesis, when Adam or the first people were given the power to name things, the names were equivalent to dominion. So Adam was given dominion simultaneously with the ability to name things. So in naming things comes power. Dominion is governance. That's what spelling actually is. You're casting a spell. So think about all of these children who are growing up in environments where, because of the level of poverty, they're hearing over 3 million words less than their counterparts that grow up in environments that are more supportive in terms of literacy, communication, cognitive development, where their parents more engage them and they have more of those resources. When a person has trouble communicating, reading, writing, you're also usurping their power. You're putting them in a position where others are going to have governance over them. All of this is connected. All of it's connected. So you have to be very, very mindful of when you are using a language that undermines who you are. Even when you're talking about things from an astrological perspective. And you say, oh, I'm a Capricorn. Well, that's just saying that is your dominant or your sun sign expression. That's not all who you are. That's the most dominant way that you express yourself. The recessive or the more sublime aspect of the way in which you express yourself is considered the moon sign. Both of them are there. But even if you're born under a certain so-called sun or moon sign, It doesn't mean that you don't express any of the other characteristics of the various different archetypes along the zodiac wheel. Shit. You know what I'm saying? It just means that you have a certain dominance or leaning. So when it says dominance, it's talking about a proclivity or a leaning or a tendency. It's not fixed. If certain things come easy, other things you just simply have to work at. For real, when you even look at that zodiac wheel, you're every one of those signs in some capacity. But if you're not exhibiting or expressing one particular quality that's necessary, then that's something you need to work at. So when you're looking at it, even from that astrological perspective, you look at the different elements: fire, air, water, and earth. All of those elements correspond to temperaments, right? Fire is hot and dry. The correspondent or the other polarity is water. That's cold and moist. We're talking about temperaments now. But then when you look at the other correspondence or the other polarities, you look at earth. Earth is cold and dry. And then air is hot and moist. So even when people are born under certain so-called sun signs, their temperament may be different based upon how they express themselves. So you look at me, right? You can tell that my temperament is more cold and dry. That's more of my dominant way in which I express myself. What you laughing at, Barbara? Yo, that's one of the dominant ways that I express myself, which means I got to work at my hot and moist shit. You know what I'm saying? At the same time, if you're looking at correspondences in terms of compatibility, two hot and dry people is going to burn that shit up. And I know y'all seen it before because of your temperaments. Nobody know how to end that conversation. Me, I'm cold and dry. I'm gonna be like that. I'm gonna be like that SpongeBob meme. All right, I'm gonna head out. That's what I'm gonna be. But at the same time, you know, I'm learning about the hot and the moist as well, right? Because I got a little of that in me too. You can tell, because that's what I had to work at. Though it doesn't come natural to me. My other temperament is more natural, right? So I'm saying all of this to say, in life, you have that sense of duality. Knowledge represents the foundation or fortitude and integrity. That's the basis. So that is the underlining significance or the essence of all things. So knowledge is to know, know is awareness. That's the consciousness that I'm actually talking about. But based upon that consciousness, you have wisdom being made manifest, which is duality, which is discernment, your ability to make decisions. It's the way that knowledge or that infinite potential is expressed. Some people don't express it in a wise way. They look at that duality and just say, I'm just that, which is lopsided. It's a leaning. Wisdom is doing what is necessary or appropriate or what the situation demands. I talked about it before in terms of it being equivalent to water, how water always seeks its own level. And whatever obstacle is in the way of water, it's going to find a way to navigate either around it, either beneath it, either through it, either evaporating and distilling on the other side and above it, or moving that obstacle out of its path. Some people don't look at the full dimensions of what wisdom actually is. And they're just set on looking at it like, well, that's just how I am. No, you need to do what the situation demands. If you're usually laid back and you don't like confrontation, you are going to consistently be put in situations where you need to be more assertive. That's the nature of how duality functions. You got that laid back shit mastered. Now you got to be more assertive, because that's going to help bring some more balance to the infinite potential, which is striving to express itself. If you limit that and say, that's just how I am, you are limiting your infinite potential at the same exact time. Does that make sense to everybody? Cool.